My coworker stood in front of the executive team, smiling like she'd just invented fire, while she presented my 6-month project as if it were her baby. Same slides, same numbers, same phrases. I'd stayed up past midnight polishing. She had no idea I was recording everything. And she definitely didn't know what I'd already started planning. But to understand how we got there, I have to back up 6 months. The whole thing started as one throwaway line in a meeting. We really need a better client management system. Something that actually talks to our other tools. Everyone nodded, complained for a minute, and moved on. I didn't. I went home that night and opened a blank document. Just write down the idea, I told myself. You can forget it tomorrow if it's stupid. By the end of the week, that stupid idea had turned into a rough blueprint. By the end of the month, it had turned into an obsession. This wasn't some little tweak. It was a full end-to-end client management system that could cut wasted time, fix our constant data errors, and probably save the company more money than my salary for the next 5 years. It was the biggest efficiency upgrade anyone had seriously proposed in the time I'd worked there, and I was the entire team. I researched the tools, I mapped out the workflows, I built the prototypes. I tested every ugly, half-broken version at 2 in the morning. Days were for my actual job. Nights and weekends were for this system. 6 months of saying I'm almost done every time someone asked if I wanted to hang out. 6 months of eating dinner in front of my laptop and telling myself it would all be worth it when they finally saw it. In my head I could see the moment. Me in that glass conference room. Slides up on the screen. Executives actually paying attention. Someone in a suit saying, "This is impressive work. We should have you leading more projects." That was supposed to be my break. My proof that I wasn't just another quiet person in the back doing invisible work. And then there was Sarah. On paper, Sarah was a mid-level manager in another department. In reality, she was the kind of person who could walk into any room, laugh twice, compliment someone's shoes, and walk out with 3 new allies. Charismatic, well-connected, office famous. We'd been work friends for about 2 years. Coffee breaks, hallway jokes, the occasional shared complaint about meetings that should have been emails. I trusted her. If you'd told me back then she'd be the one standing in front of the executive team with my project on her slides, I would have laughed. Because in my mind, we were on the same side. I was wrong. The funny thing about people who steal from you at work is they almost never kick the door in. They knock, they smile. They ask if you need help. That's how it started with Sarah. About a month before everything blew up, she stopped by my desk with 2 coffees. I grabbed an extra latte, she said, like it had just occurred to her. You still working on that client system thing? Yeah, I said, still wrestling with it. She sat on the edge of my desk like we'd done this 100 times. So tell me about it, she said. I'm just curious. I keep hearing little bits, but I want to understand what you're building. On week 1, that felt nice. Someone actually cared enough to ask. I walked her through the basics: how client data moved, where we were losing time, the mess of duplicate entries. She nodded along, asked simple questions, the kind you'd expect from someone outside the technical side. Honestly, that sounds huge, she said. This could make you really stand out here. At the time, that line felt supportive. Looking back, it sounds a lot more like scouting. Over the next few weeks, the coffee chats kept happening. She'd pop by late afternoon, just as my brain was melting, with a new quick question. How are you handling permissions in this thing? Are you tracking client history by account or by contact? Wait, how are you calculating the projected ROI again? The questions got more specific, more technical, not in a teach me so I can learn way. In a teach me so I can repeat this later and sound smart way. I didn't see it then. Back then, I just thought, wow, she's really interested. The first real red flag showed up in a leadership huddle. We were crammed in a small conference room when one of the executives said, "I heard there's a new client management system in the works. Something promising." I felt my cheeks heat up. I opened my mouth. Sarah spoke first. "Yeah, I've been following that pretty closely," she said. "It has a lot of potential." She didn't say she was building it. She also didn't say who was. After the meeting, she caught my expression in the hallway. "Oh, she said. I'm just hyping it up. I want them excited when you're ready. And I believed her. Then her calendar started changing. I'd see the shared screens and notice recurring slots with executives. Strategy check-in Johnson. Q2, priorities, leadership. Anytime there was a meeting about future initiatives, her name was on the invite. One afternoon, a coworker from another team stopped by my desk. You and Sarah are working together now, he asked. On what I said. That client system thing, he shrugged. She mentioned her project earlier. I just assumed you were on it with her. My stomach pulled tight at that word. Her eye forced a little laugh. I think she just means she's excited about it, I said. He gave me a look. Okay, just keep an eye on that. She's done this before. That should have been the moment I woke up. Instead, I filed it under office gossip and kept going. The file request came on a Tuesday. She messaged me. Hey, do you have a draft of your presentation? I want to really understand the system so I can champion your work when I'm in those meetings. That phrase hit every emotional button I had. Champion your work. Someone with influence in my corner. Someone in rooms I wasn't in yet. I stared at the deck I'd been polishing for weeks. Every slide was mine design numbers, wording, flow. This was the version I imagined using when I finally presented. I hesitated for maybe 10 seconds. Then I attached the file and hit send. Thank you, she replied almost instantly. This is amazing. I'm so proud of you. I'll make sure leadership understands how big this is. What I didn't know was that her own meeting with leadership was already on the calendar. No invite for me. Title, Client Management System Proposal. Later that week, the red flags stopped being subtle. I walked past the break room and heard my name. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but my brain latched onto her voice. Yeah, I've been working on this client system for months, she was saying. Pulled a lot of late nights. I think it could really change how we operate. My feet stopped moving. Another manager whistled. Damn, that sounds like a big lift. When are you presenting next week? She said. I finally got on the executive calendar. My heart thudded. I checked my email. No calendar invite. No hey, want to co-present. I opened the shared meeting schedule. There it was. Her session with the executive team. Her name, Nomi. I messaged her. Hey, heard you're meeting with leadership about the client system. Do you want me there to walk through the technical side? Typing dots appeared, disappeared, came back. Oh, it's just a quick overview, she wrote. Don't worry, I'll just soft sell the concept. When it's further along, you can go in depth with them. My gut twisted. The system was already further along. I'd been building it for half a year. A day or two later, I walked into a conference room early and saw a single sheet of paper left on the table. It was my title slide, same layout, same project name. Only the footer had been edited. My name was gone. Hers was there instead. I stared at it, that cold, buzzing feeling climbing up my spine. Maybe it's just a placeholder. Maybe she's just mocking it up. My brain threw every excuse at me. Standing in that empty conference room, holding my work with her name slapped on it, those excuses felt paper thin. I folded the page and slipped it into my notebook. For the first time, instead of imagining how excited I'd be to present my project, I started wondering, what if I wasn't the one presenting it at all? The day everything snapped into focus didn't start with thunder or drama. It started with a casual comment. Hey, one of the analysts said as I walked by. Did you hear? Sarah's presenting some big system today. Leadership's all going to be there. My throat went dry. What system? I asked. Even though I already knew. He shrugged. Something with client management. Sounds like a big deal. They booked the big conference room for an hour. I smiled like my chest wasn't tightening. Got it. Thanks. I went straight to my desk and opened the shared calendar. There it was in clean company font. Client Management System Proposal. Presenter, Sarah Collins. Attendees, CEO, CFO, GU, VP of Operations. My name was nowhere. I stared at the screen until my eyes ached. Maybe she was just pitching the idea. Maybe she was going to say my name. Maybe she wasn't actually taking credit. Then I remembered the printed slide with her name in the footer. No, I wasn't overreacting. The meeting was at 10. At 9:58, I found myself halfway down the hall from the glass conference room, pretending to scroll through my phone while my heart pounded. Through the glass, I could see the backs of the executives at the table, the big screen at the front, and Sarah standing near the display with a remote in her hand. My title slide was up there. My project name, her ownership. I didn't walk in, I didn't make a scene. I just stepped closer to the wall and listened. Thank you all for making time. Her voice floated out, smooth and confident. As you know, we've been facing a lot of challenges with how we manage client data. So over the past several months, I've been working on a new client management system to address that. I've been working, she said it like it was nothing. She clicked to the next slide. It wasn't just similar to my deck. It was my deck. Same process map I drew at 2 a.m. Same bullet points I'd rewritten 10 times. Same color-coded pain points, slide after slide. She walked them through 6 months of my life as if she'd dreamed it up in her sleep. Here's the current workflow, she said. We touch 5 different systems just to update one client record. I started mapping this out when I realized how much time we were losing. I remembered that night, Friday, office empty, my dinner cold. She hadn't even been in the building. This redesign alone could save us roughly 12 to 15 hours per week. Per team, she said, landing cleanly on my ROI slide. Over a year, she quoted my number. The executives were eating it up. This is incredible work, Sarah the Coup said. I had no idea you were working at this level of detail, the CEO added. How did you turn this around so fast? Someone asked. She laughed softly. Well, I've been chipping away at it for a while, she said. Late nights, weekends, you know how it is. I pressed my back against the wall to keep myself from walking in there. My hands were shaking. I curled them into fists until my nails dug into my palms. She kept going. This is the implementation plan, she said. Phase 1 focuses on internal teams. Then we roll out to client-facing staff. I've already mapped out the resource needs and timeline. Another executive jumped in. This is exactly what we've needed for years, the CFO said. The numbers make sense. The logic is solid. I'm impressed. Me too, the CEO said. This is the kind of initiative we want to see more of in leadership. Great job, Sarah. I watched her shoulders lift. Just a little. That satisfied rise when praise lands exactly where you want it. Thank you, she said. I really believe this could change how we operate. No, we built this together. No, I worked closely with my name. No, the person who wrote the code is standing right outside this room. Nothing. The meeting wrapped up with questions about budget and timelines. Whenever someone got close to a technical detail she clearly didn't know, she smiled and slid around it. We can dig into that as we move into development, she said. I stayed in the hallway until chairs scraped and people started filing out. Then I turned and walked back to my desk on autopilot. I didn't slam anything. I didn't cry. I just sat down and stared at my keyboard while this hollow anger buzzed through my chest. 2 hours later, an email hit my inbox. Company-wide announcement, subject line. Congratulations to Sarah Collins on her promotion. I clicked it. We're excited to announce Sarah's promotion to senior manager in recognition of her outstanding leadership and her innovative work on the new client management system. Her new title, her new responsibilities, my work. My name was nowhere. Not even a vague in team. 6 months of late nights. Her promotion, one of us got a career boost. The other got erased. For a second, all I wanted was to storm into the CEO's office, throw my laptop on his desk, and scroll through every file, every timestamp, every line of code, to yell, to accuse, to make them feel as humiliated as I did. But anger burns fast. It flared white hot, then ran into a wall. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, listening to phones ring and keyboards clack like it was any other morning. My first instinct was to react. My second instinct was to think. I didn't build a channel called Calculated Consequences just to lose my mind the first time someone stole from me. If I was going to do something, it had to stick. It had to be undeniable. It had to make sure this never happened again to me or anyone she targeted next. So I took a breath, opened a new document, and typed 3 words at the top of the page. What I can prove. If she was going to use my work to climb, I was going to use the truth to pull the ladder out from under her. Not with a tantrum. but with evidence. Once the shock wore off, I stopped asking how could she do this, and started asking a better question. What can I prove? I looked at those words at the top of my new document, and decided that was the only thing that mattered now. Not what I felt, not what I suspected, what I can prove. First layer, digital history. I opened the folder where I'd been dumping everything for 6 months. Drafts, diagrams, test exports, ugly early prototypes. From the outside it looked messy, to me it was a timeline. I sorted by date created. At the very top was the first file. Client_system_idea_v1. Created just after midnight on a random Sunday. 6 months before Sarah's presentation. I took a screenshot of the file details: name, path, created date, modified date, and dropped it into my document. Underneath I wrote, initial concept file, created 6 months before Sarah's presentation. Then I worked my way down the list. Workflow_map_v3. Data_cleanup_notes. ROI_projection_v5. Each file had a date stamped long before Sarah suddenly got interested. Next stop, version control. Every time I'd pushed code, the system logged my username, timestamp, and my commit message. Fixing duplicate client bug again. Added validation so sales can't break this new reporting layer. Please don't kill the server. I captured screens of the commit history. Line after line, month after month, with my name on each one. Click, screenshot, paste. I emailed it and kept it painfully normal. Hey, I'm compiling documentation on the client management system I've been developing, I wrote. Can you send me any relevant server logs or access history tied to my user account for the dev environment? No drama, no names. He replied fast. Sure thing, he said. You've been living in there, by the way. He sent logs showing every deployment, every test run, every environment tweak, all tied to my account. Those went into the document too. Then I opened my email and searched the project name. My inbox lit up with months of messages, requests for data from other teams, questions about edge cases, weekly updates to my manager, finished first prototype for client system, testing new workflow, seeing time savings and mock data. Architecture updated. This could cut a lot of manual work. I exported them, highlighted the important lines, and dropped them into my file. Page after page of I built this, quietly sitting in my sent folder the whole time. And then there was her email. Hey, do you have a draft of your presentation? I want to really understand the system so I can champion your work when I'm in those meetings. Next to it, my reply, with the full deck attached. I put those screenshots side by side with her calendar invite on the left. Her request for my slides. On the right, Client Management System Proposal Presenter, Sarah Collins. Date, 3 days later. Underneath, I wrote, Sarah requested my full deck 3 days before presenting the system as her own. Digital trail, established. Next layer, people. I didn't want this to be a story about hurt feelings. I wanted other voices, in writing. First up, the designer. Hey, I said, walking over to her desk. Do you remember those graphics for the client system? The before and after work? Of course, she said. You came over with that rough sketch and asked if I could make it look less tragic. That sounds right, I laughed. I'm doing full documentation on the project. Can you send me a quick email saying, I asked you for those visuals and gave you the specs? She frowned. Is everything okay? Yeah, I said. Just trying to build better habits. Paper trail from now on. Sure, she shrugged. I'll send it. 5 minutes later, I had an email stating that on date, I'd approached her with a new client management system concept, explained it, and requested the graphics. Into the file it went. Next, do you remember when we spun up that extra dev environment for my client system? I asked him later. Yeah, he said. You didn't want to break our main sandbox. Exactly. Will you send me a short note saying we set that up for my project and when? He gave me a look that said something's up, but he didn't push. I'll send it, he said. He did, I added it. Then I reached out to 2 coworkers whose teams I'd interviewed while designing the workflows. Hey, can you put in writing that on date I met with you to map how your team handles client info? For the new system I'm building, both sent short, factual emails. Those went in too. I pulled my weekly status reports next. Every Monday, I'd emailed my manager a list of what I'd done. Progress on client management system. Finished X. Testing shows big time savings. Still refining architecture. He'd replied with the usual, good work, keep me posted. I stitched those into one clean timeline. Months of here's what I'm building sitting in his inbox. Once I had the digital history, logs, emails, witnesses, and status reports, there was one last piece, the technical heart of the system. Every Monday, I'd emailed my manager a list of what I'd done. Progress on client management system. Finished X. Testing shows big time savings. Still refining architecture. He'd replied with the usual, good work, keep me posted. I stitched those into one clean timeline. Months of here's what I'm building sitting in his inbox. Once I had the digital history, logs, emails, witnesses, and status reports, there was one last piece, the technical heart of the system. I captured a few sections that showed the structure, the decisions, the way the pieces fit together. Then I grabbed my early architecture sketch and the cleaned up version I'd made later. Underneath, I wrote original and refined architecture diagrams, created and updated by me over a 6-month period. Finally, I went back to my messages with Sarah. Early on, her questions were basic. Wait, what's the bottleneck again? How are the tools connected right now? How do you get that savings number? Weeks later, right before her presentation, the tone shifted. Send me your deck so I can go to bat for you. I'll make sure leadership sees how important this is. I put those messages next to the rest of the timeline. For months, she didn't understand the basics. 3 days after she got my full deck, she was suddenly the architect of the whole system. At the end of the document, I wrote a short summary. Over 6 months, I designed and built the new client management system. There is continuous, traceable evidence tying the work to my accounts, responsibilities, and name. 3 days before presenting the system to leadership, Sarah requested my complete presentation deck, under the pretense of supporting my work. She was the sole presenter in the resulting executive meeting, and was promoted for her innovative system. With no mention of my contribution, I read that twice. It didn't sound emotional. It sounded like something you'd hand to HR or legal. When I hit save, the page count stopped at 47. 47 pages of receipts. I named it the most boring thing I could think of. client_system_documentation_master.pdf. Then I backed it up to my personal email. After that, I did something that felt completely wrong for how angry I was. I walked over to Sarah's desk. Hey, I said, smiling. Congratulations on the promotion. Her shoulders dropped in relief. Oh my God, thank you, she said. It's been a lot. Big role, big project. Must feel good, I said. It does, she said. We'll have to catch up soon. There might be ways to loop you in. I'm sure there will be, I replied. She had no idea I'd just spent the day building a 47-page wrecking ball with her name all over it. I went back to my desk, closed my laptop, and headed home. If she wanted to play games with image and perception, that was fine. She could have her moment, her new title, her shiny post. Because I knew something she didn't. Promotions are based on stories people believe. But careers can be destroyed by proof. Act 5, the strategic SETUP 20 o'clock to 24 o'clock. After I finished the 47-page file and sent a copy to my personal email, I just sat there in the half-empty office, fingers resting on the keyboard, doing nothing. The anger was still there. It was just quieter now. Like a storm that had moved far enough away that you could finally hear yourself think. I didn't need to ask, do I have a case? I knew the answer to that. The real question was, how do I use this so it actually matters? Storming into an office and shoving my laptop in somebody's face would feel amazing for about 10 seconds. Then it would turn into a messy argument. The kind where people who hate conflict rush to smooth everything over and call it a miscommunication. That wasn't what I wanted. I wanted something that would stick, something no one could ignore, something that made it very expensive for her, and for the company to pretend they didn't see what she'd done. So the first person I called wasn't my manager. It was a friend of mine from school who happened to be a lawyer. We didn't work for the same company. She wasn't involved in any of this. But she was the kind of person who read contracts for fun and enjoyed finding the hidden traps. I texted her. Got a workplace question. Not urgent, but I could use your brain. She replied almost instantly. Call me. I laid it all out. The project, the theft, the promotion, the 47 pages of receipts. By the time I finished, I could hear my own breathing in the silence on the line. Okay, she said finally. First of all, I'm sorry. That's brutal. Second, you did the right thing gathering evidence before you did anything else. I don't want to blow myself up, I said. I just want this to be undeniable. Good, she said. Then here are the rules. 1. Don't secretly record anything that breaks company policy or state law. 2. No ranting about this on social media. 3. Everything you share internally needs to be factual, not emotional. She paused. Let the documents talk. That I can do, I said. She walked me through the basics. How intellectual property usually belonged to the company. How credit still mattered. How retaliation worked. What phrases HR took very seriously. When we hung up, I didn't feel happy, but I felt armed. The next day, I booked a short meeting with HR. The subject line was intentionally boring. Project attribution question. When I sat down in that neutral-colored room across from the HR rep, I didn't start with, Sarah stole my life. I started with, I'd like this on record. Then I told the story the way I'd written it in my document dates, files, meetings, the email where she asked for my deck, the timing of her presentation and promotion. I mentioned the full evidence file and slid a printed copy of the summary across the table. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now, I said. I just want a clear trail showing that I raised this calmly and through the right channels as soon as I had the facts lined up. The HR rep nodded, eyes moving across the page, her expression tightening at a few specific lines. Okay, she said. We'll review this and follow up. HR speak. Careful non-committal, but the paper trail had officially started. The next step was quieter, more human. Over the following week, I checked in with a couple of people who'd made those small comments about Sarah before. Warnings I'd filed under maybe they're just being negative when I still thought of her as a friend. I didn't walk up and say, she's evil. I asked a different question. Have you ever had a project where you felt like your work disappeared under someone else's name? You'd be amazed how fast people open up to that. One guy told me about a report she'd helped polish that somehow turned into her initiative on a performance review. Someone else mentioned an idea they'd pitched in a meeting that she repeated later in a different room, conveniently forgetting to mention where she'd heard it first. Patterns, not a one-time lapse in judgment. A way of operating. I didn't drag anyone into something they didn't want to be part of, but a few of them said, unprompted, if you ever need me to confirm anything, I will. Noted while all of that was happening, Sarah slid into her new role like she'd been born for it. She moved through the halls with that new title glow, popped into higher-level meetings, made little comments about my system and my initiative. Her LinkedIn got updated. She reposted the promotion email with a grateful caption. I hated seeing it, but I didn't comment. I didn't react or subtweet. Let her enjoy it, I told myself. Let the story settle in people's minds. Because there's one thing that makes a fall hit harder. Height. The last piece I needed was the right stage. A one-on-one meeting could be brushed aside. A private complaint could be spun as a misunderstanding. But a room full of people, with leadership in the front row, that's different. When the email went out asking for topics for the upcoming quarterly all-hands, I saw my opening. I sent a message to the CEO's assistant and copied my manager. Hi. I'd like to request a 10-minute slot at the all-hands to talk about project development transparency. Using the new client management system as a case study, I think it could be useful for the whole company to see how we track ownership and contributions on major initiatives. No accusations. No names. Just a case study. The reply came the next day. You're on the agenda for 10 minutes. Topic: Project development transparency. I stared at that line for a long second. Stage secured. After that, everything got very simple. At night, I turned my 47-page document into a short slide deck. No drama. White background, black text, big readable screenshots, timeline, logs, emails, witness notes, the one calendar event that tied everything together. I practiced how I'd talk through it, not like a victim begging to be believed, like someone presenting the findings of an internal review. During the day, I kept my routine exactly the same. I showed up on time, did my actual job, answered questions about totally unrelated work. I said hi when I passed Sarah in the hallway. I even congratulated her again when someone mentioned her promotion in a meeting. On the outside, it looked like I'd accepted what happened and moved on. On the inside, everything was already lined up. Proof, process, timing, audience. All that was left was to wait for the quarterly meeting. 10 short minutes on an agenda that were about to redefine what transparency meant in our building. Quarterly meetings at our company usually felt like a long podcast you didn't pick. A week after Sarah's promotion email went out, the invite hit everyone's inbox. Q2 company update plus innovation highlights. Right there on the agenda, near the bottom. Project development transparency, 10 minutes. Presenter my name, I'd asked for that slot. I'd kept the description vague on purpose. By then, HR had my file, leadership had my file, and a few people who'd been burned by Sarah in quieter ways knew I was doing something about it. But nobody knew exactly what. The day of the meeting, the big room was packed. Rows of chairs, folding tables, company logo on the projector. The executive team sat up front, at a long table, CEO in the middle, other leaders on either side. Sarah was in the second row, a little off-center, with a clear view of the screen. New title on her name badge. New confidence in the way she was sitting. When I walked in, she waved like we were just coworkers again, like none of this was hanging in the air between us. I smiled back, my heart was pounding, my hands were steady. The first half of the meeting was the usual revenue charts, pipeline talk, culture slides. I could not have repeated a single number if you'd paid me. I was just waiting for 5 words. Next up, we have my name. When the CEO finally said it, who's going to talk about project development, transparency, and the client management system? My pulse jumped. I stood up, walked to the front, and pulled up my deck. Thanks, I said into the mic. This won't take long. A few people laughed. They thought I was about to nag them about documentation practices. The first slide came up. No animations, no clip art, just a simple title. Who actually built the client management system? The room shifted. Chairs squeaked. Someone stopped typing. From the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah's smile go tight. I want to talk about the new client management system, I said. The same one that was presented to leadership 2 weeks ago. I let that hang there for a beat. I'm not here to re-explain the benefits, I continued. You've already heard them. I'm here to talk about something we don't really like talking about in corporate life. Who actually did the work? Then I clicked. The next slide was a timeline. On the left, 6 months of dates. On the right, file names, commit entries, weekly reports. At the top, I said, is the first concept file, created 6 months ago, on my computer. I zoomed in on the screenshot. File name, path, created date. Below that, I continued, are the early diagrams, data analysis files, prototypes, all time-stamped, all tied to my account. Click. These logs, I said on the next slide, are from our version control and server history. Every commit, every deployment, every environment change, all of them under my username. The room got very quiet. I moved to the email slide. Here are some of the emails I sent while I was building this. I said, requests for data, questions about edge cases, status updates to my manager. All of this happens over a 6-month period. Now, I added, let's look at what happens 3 days before the executive presentation. I clicked again. On the left side of the slide, Sarah's email. Hey, do you have a draft of your presentation? I want to really understand the system so I can champion your work when I'm in those meetings. On the right side, my reply, with the attachment icon clearly visible. And here I said, pointing, is the calendar invite for the executive meeting. Client management system proposal. Presenter, Sarah Collins. Date 3 days later. A low ripple went through the crowd, soft, uncomfortable. Up to this point, I said calmly, No one else had been involved in developing the system. No shared work, no co-authors, no additional contributors. Next slide, witness emails. These are short statements from the designer who built the visuals for my specs, the IT specialist who set up the dev environment for my project, and team members I consulted. I said. They confirmed they worked on the system with me and only me 4 months. Click. I'm not going to drag you through code line by line, I said, but I do want to show you one thing. On the screen, a piece of my code, with my comments and the timestamp. This is part of the system, I said. The commit history, the structure, the comments all tied to my account over months of development. If you've ever built something like this, you know you can't fake that kind of trail in a week. Then I turned away from the screen. 2 weeks ago, this system was presented to the executive team, I said. I wasn't in the room. My name wasn't mentioned. The project was credited entirely to someone else. I didn't say her name. I didn't have to. Everyone knew. And that person was promoted based on that work. I finished. Silence. I looked at Sarah. She was staring at the screen, shoulders stiff, color drained from her face. Sarah, I said, my voice still even, I'm going to ask you one question. You can answer it now, or you can answer it later. But I think everyone in this room deserves to hear it. I clicked to the next slide. On one side, my architecture diagram. On the other, a simplified version of a core algorithm. Can you explain this part? I asked. Why this algorithm is structured this way? What this condition is doing? What breaks if we change it? I stepped back from the mic so my voice wouldn't crowd her. Heads turned toward her. She opened her mouth, closed it, swallowed. She started. I worked on the overall vision. We collaborated. I didn't memorize every line of code. That's fair, I said, so I'll explain it. I walked them through the logic, plain and clear, what it did, why each step mattered, what real-world problem it solved. Then I showed the commit history and the file header with my name on it. When I finished, I clicked to the final slide, the cover of my 47-page document. Client Management System, Development Documentation, prepared by my name, length 47 pages. I'm not asking you to take my word over hers, I said. I'm asking you to look at the timestamps, the logs, the emails, the reports, the code, and the witnesses. I've given all of this to HR and leadership. If you want to read it, you can. I turned to the front row. I care about this company, I said. I care about this system. But more than that, I care about something basic. If we're going to promote people for their work, we should make sure it's actually their work. I stopped, no dramatic, dropped the mic, just silence. The CEO's jaw was tight. The VP of Operations looked furious. The CFO was already writing something down. Finally, the VP turned to Sarah. Did you develop this system? He asked, yes or no. She looked like she was trying to swallow sand. I was involved, she said weakly. It was a team effort. There is no team listed anywhere in this documentation, the CFO said. There is one name. The CEO looked at me. Thank you for presenting this so clearly, he said. Then he turned back to the room. We're going to take a short break. As people stood and started whispering, I stepped away from the podium. HR was already on their feet, moving toward the front. Within minutes, Sarah was walking out of the room with them, eyes down, shoulders tight. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't thrown anything. I just put 47 pages of truth on a screen and watched her entire story start to crumble in real time. When the CEO called it a short break, it wasn't really about coffee. It was the sound of a building trying to process what it had just seen. People stood up in clumps. Some pretended to stretch. Some stared at their phones. Most of them were doing the same thing, quietly replaying my slides in their heads. I stayed near the back wall, holding a paper cup I'd never actually sipped from. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Sarah walk out with HR and 2 executives. No one said escorted, but that's what it was. She didn't look at me. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel like it was being squeezed in a fist. I went back to my desk and opened my inbox like it was any other day. Answered a support question. Closed a lingering ticket. From the outside, nothing looked different. On the inside, everything had shifted. The official fallout started quickly. Within a few hours, My manager pulled me into a small conference room. Leadership face on. No small talk. HR and the executive team are reviewing your documentation, he said. I can't share details yet, but you did the right thing bringing it forward the way you did. Corporate translation. This is very bad for her. The next morning, an email went out from HR. It didn't name anyone, but it didn't need to. Recent concerns have been raised around project attribution and promotion decisions. We want to reaffirm that misrepresentation of work or contributions is a serious integrity issue and will be treated as such. 2 hours later, her promotion vanished from the internal org chart. Her title reverted. Then her profile disappeared altogether. By the end of the day, people weren't whispering if something had happened. They were whispering how bad it must have been. I didn't learn the final result in a town hall or public speech. HR called me into a room, closed the door, and got straight to the point. Based on the documentation and our investigation, the HR director said, "We've confirmed that your work on the client management system was misrepresented. Corrective action has been taken." "Is she still here?" I asked. "No," she said. "Her employment has ended." There was a small, strange silence after that. Relief and something almost like grief sat next to each other in my chest. I wasn't happy she was gone, but I wasn't sorry either. People love to say, "It's just business." They say it when they're benefiting from something unfair. Turns out, just business cuts both ways. A few days later, another email went out, this time from the CEO. He didn't name her, but he named me. Recent events have highlighted serious gaps in how we recognize and protect individual contributions on major projects. We have corrected a promotion decision that was made based on incomplete information. I want to apologize directly to the team member whose work on the client management system was not properly attributed my name. Seeing my name in that sentence didn't erase what happened, but it did something important. It made the truth official. In the same message, he laid out new rules. Every major project would have a clearly documented owner from day one. Key contributors had to be listed and verified before any promotion tied to that project was approved. Leadership would review logs and artifacts, not just whoever happened to be holding the clicker at the presentation. My 47 pages had quietly turned into a policy change. A week later, my manager asked for a quick check-in that turned into not quick at all. "We're adjusting your title," he said, sliding a letter across the table. "Senior Manager, Solutions." Same level Sarah had been promoted to, this time, for the right reasons. The letter spelled it out. For the development and implementation of the client management system, and for demonstrating exceptional professionalism in addressing an integrity issue. At the bottom, a number. 15%, plus a project bonus. I didn't cry, I didn't shout. I just sat there and thought, this is what it looks like when evidence finally catches up to a lie. The ripple effects didn't stop with me. Coworkers started dropping by my desk with their own stories. Not all were dramatic, but the theme was the same. I did the work. Someone else got the spotlight. Watching you do that, one coworker said quietly, made me realize I'm not crazy for wanting my name on my own work. He wasn't. None of us were. The culture shifted not overnight, not perfectly, but you could feel it. Leaders asked, who actually built this? More people kept simple records of their projects. Not out of paranoia, out of some. Credit theft went from annoying politics to career-ending risk. As for Sarah, our industry is small. People talk. Integrity violation travels faster than a shiny promotion post. Last I checked, her profile said only, former manager. No company name. No details. The ladder she'd climbed with other people's work had nothing under it anymore. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. The real win wasn't watching her fall. It was knowing that the next time someone thought about pulling the same stunt, they'd remember what happened in that room. If I learned anything from all of this, it's this. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to throw things to get justice. Document everything. Keep your own timeline. Let them think they've won, if they're that desperate for it. And then, when it matters most, put the truth where everyone can see it, and let their own lies do the rest of the work.